Episode 94, Used to Show Off. Tense Standoff. Li Leiling took a deep breath and spoke with a determined expression, Mr. Assistant. This result is truly inconceivable. I need a reasonable explanation. The assistant looked helpless. Miss Li, this is Director Cook's decision, and I cannot influence it. Then let me see Director Cook. I want to talk to him in person. Li Leiling insisted. At this moment, the other actresses were also in an uproar, suspecting that the assistant had made a mistake. Even Lin Jiji was somewhat surprised by this turn of events. The assistant had no choice but to say, "All right, I'll convey your request." After a tense wait, the assistant soon came out again and addressed the crowd. "Miss Li, Director Cook asked me to convey to you and the ladies present that once the Noble commercial is released, everyone will naturally see that Miss Ningxi is well deserving of the role." After a gentlemanly bow, he no longer spoke and instead looked in the direction of the corner, saying, "Are you Miss Ning's manager, Ms. Lin Jiji? Director Cook invites you to discuss the specific details of the collaboration inside." "Okay, thank you." Lin Jiji was momentarily stunned, then stood up and followed the assistant into the audition room. Behind her, there was only Li Leiling with a flushed face and a group of dumbfounded actresses. Darn it! Is it really Ningxi? Did we actually lose to someone like her? It's a joke. To be honest, just now, I wanted to say that, aside from how Ningxi is, she is an artist under Lin Jiji. It couldn't be that simple. Lin Jiji wouldn't make such a low-level mistake. As expected, she came prepared. We were too careless. TSK, it looks like there will be another dark horse in the entertainment industry in the future. Ha, Li Leiling has lost face big time this time. She was overshadowed by Cold Manyun before, and now, with Cold Manyun gone, she's going to be overshadowed by an artist under Lin Jiji. After discussing the collaboration details, on the way back, Lin Jiji looked thoughtfully at the girl beside her. The more they interacted, the more Lin Jiji felt that there was something unpredictable about her. Ningxi had been in a state of meditation the entire time, not even eating lunch. Now, she was holding a hot dog and munching on it. Seeing Lin Jiji looking at her, she puffed out her cheeks and asked in a muffled voice, "Sis Ji, why are you looking at me? Do you feel incredibly fortunate to have such a clever little partner like me?" Lin Jiji chuckled. "I always thought this method was quite risky because Cook is well versed in Chinese culture. I was worried that your acting skills would be exposed, but unexpectedly, you played the Guqin so well. With that level of proficiency, it would take at least 10 years of practice. However, I didn't see any mention of this skill in your profile." Ningxi almost choked on her food. "Sis Ji, you're overestimating me. Do I look like someone who would spend so much time cultivating my character? To be honest with you, I only learned for a month. Moreover, I can only play this one piece. Luckily, my memory is pretty good. I completely memorized it through rote learning. At that time, my only thought was to use it to show off." Hearing Ningxi's answer, Lin Jiji was stunned for a moment and couldn't help but cry and laugh. "So it's like that." Ningxi nodded. "Yeah, I like to learn a bit of everything. I learn a lot of random and miscellaneous things, but I'm not really proficient in anything. If I can learn something quickly, that's good, but for skills that require years of practice, I only scratch the surface." She didn't have the time to cultivate her character. The experiences she went through in the Ning family forced her to frantically learn about all the areas and knowledge she didn't understand, just to feel secure. Due to the upcoming perfume ad shoot, Ningxi needed to stay in Los Angeles for a while. Taking advantage of this opportunity, she had an important matter to attend to. She needed to visit someone. Midnight. Ningxi set off for the nearby city of St. Bernardino in Los Angeles. Since no one would recognize her in such a place, there was no need for disguise. Ningxi didn't bother with makeup, just changed into a simple and comfortable white t-shirt and jeans. St. Bernardino had been the most dangerous city in the entire M country for 5 consecutive years. It gathered a large population of low-income individuals and was located on the main smuggling route, making it the place with the highest number of riots nationwide. Ningxi paid double the fare to persuade the driver to go there, and he only dared to drive to the city's boundary before immediately leaving as soon as she got off the car. The place seemed like an abandoned ruin, mostly consisting of low, moldy dilapidated buildings and abandoned junkyards. Dimly lit streets and alleyways were filled with signs of shady transactions. However, the entertainment industry here was thriving. Even though it was late at night, it was still lively with sounds of drinking, gambling, and fistfights everywhere. On the street corners, male pedestrians mostly had muscular builds with fierce tattoos, appearing menacing. Women were dressed in provocative and hot outfits, with heavily smudged Gothic-style makeup on their faces. So, when Ningxi, dressed like a high school student, stepped into the late-night St. Bernardino, she looked like a small white rabbit walking among wolves. On the streets, pairs of probing eyes carried a chilling coldness, scrutinizing this stranger who had suddenly entered their territory. Ningxi had a lollipop in her mouth, earphones in her ears, strolling comfortably through the streets and alleys as if walking on an ordinary street. Because of her nonchalant appearance, seeming like she was just going home, those eyes only stared curiously. No one actively picked a fight. After all, daring to appear in St. Bernardino at such a late hour, not to mention an adult, even a child of a few years old would definitely not be an ordinary person. Behind her, there was probably some substantial force, and those with a bit of street smarts wouldn't casually seek trouble. After traversing a chaotic slum, her field of vision gradually opened up, and not far away, the urban area was already near. The closer to the heart of the city, the more prosperous it became. That area was where the upper-class individuals of St. Bernardino resided. 1 year apart, there weren't many changes here. Following her memory, Ningxi easily arrived at the doorstep of a detached house. This small building was surrounded by dense woods, looking eerie, somewhat like a witch's castle in a fairy tale. The small building was pitch black, with no lights on. Were they asleep, or was the owner not at home? Ningxi pushed open the courtyard gate and walked to the front door of the small building. She pressed the doorbell, and the sound echoed eerily in the quiet night. After waiting for a while, there was no response from inside. She pressed it 2 more times, but it remained silent inside. Ningxi scratched her head, glanced at the row of flower pots under the window ledge, counted to the 3rd one, then reached under the flower pot and retrieved a bunch of keys. Sigh, the key hiding skills were really unchanged after all these years. After getting the keys, Ningxi directly opened the door and entered the house. She fumbled around and turned on the lights inside. After searching the lower floor, it was clear that the owner wasn't at home. Looking at the time on her phone, Ningxi sat down on the sofa in the downstairs living room, deciding to wait for the owner to return here. The cold house felt empty as Ningxi waited for the owner, who had yet to return. After a while, Ningxi got up, her attention drawn to some cartoon action figures on the table. Her beautiful eyes lingered on the figures for a while, a slight smile playing on her lips. That person hadn't changed at all, seemingly living in a two-dimensional world. But they are really exquisite. Ningxi casually picked up one of the action figures, playing with it to pass the time during this boring wait. The action figure was delicate, meticulously crafted with attention to every detail. The character had a unique and arrogant pose, holding 2 realistic firearms. "I have 2 guns." When Ningxi accidentally triggered the switch on the action figure, the cartoon character suddenly spoke. Caught off guard, even Ningxi was startled, instinctively throwing the action figure away. "I have 2 guns, one is called Shoot. And the other is called Ah." Watching the cartoon action figure still shouting incessantly as it landed near the edge of the floor, Ningxi snapped back to reality. She suddenly remembered that the person had been crazy about a certain esports battle game, and these cartoon action figures seemed to be the main characters from that game, with lines identical to the game characters. If others knew that the terrifying existence that made most of the underground world tremble had such a cute side, it was uncertain how they would feel. After all the lines of the action figure had been said, the room fell into silence once again. Ningxi pursed her lips, walked over slowly, and was about to pick up the action figure. She considered that if the person saw her treating their beloved action figure like this, the consequences. Ningxi shivered, not daring to think too deeply. Just as she was about to retrieve the action figure, Ningxi's gaze inadvertently swept across the lower floor. She noticed that the doorknob on the inner door was slowly turning. Ningxi's face lit up with joy. However, within a few seconds, the smile froze on her face and quickly faded away. Originally, she thought it was the person she was waiting for returning. But upon closer inspection, it was not the case. The doorknob kept turning, not like the return of the owner, but more like a visit from a thief. In a place like St. Bernardino, thieves were rampant. Even open and blatant burglary and murder under broad daylight were quite common, especially in places where high-profile individuals lived, making them targets for these desperados. Ningxi didn't hesitate at all. She immediately went back inside, placed the cartoon action figure back on the table, and then opened a drawer. As expected, it's still the same. Ningxi murmured to herself, her gaze falling on a quietly lying black pistol inside the drawer. German-made PPQ, it really suits that person's style. Ningxi took out the pistol and swiftly loaded 10 rounds of ammunition. In this city, many of those desperate thieves carried firearms. No matter how skilled or fast they were, it was challenging to outmaneuver a gun. After loading the 10 rounds, a creaking sound followed, and Ningxi frowned, looking downstairs. Below, 6 men in black were slowly approaching the house. Their steps were not light, and in terms of posture and condition, it seemed like they had undergone professional training, not like ordinary burglars. Could it be that they're not thieves? Ningxi looked more puzzled. If they were thieves, did they need to be so bold? 6 people, 6 guns? Looking at their attire, it was extremely standardized, as if they were well-trained thieves wearing expensive clothes. In a place like St. Bernardino, was there really a well-dressed and well-trained thief team? Regardless of whether others believed it or not, Ningxi was certain she wouldn't. The 6 black-clad men below, armed with guns, continuously made various professional gestures, their sharp eyes scanning the entire building. Soon, the first floor was thoroughly searched by the 6 men. Apparently, they didn't find what they were looking for. Instead, the leading man raised his index finger, lightly beckoning towards the direction of the second floor. Seeing this, the other 5 black-clad men nodded in agreement. They followed behind the leader, advancing towards the second floor, seemingly afraid of disturbing the owner of the building. However, these people were unaware that every move they made since entering had been observed by a certain woman. At this moment, Ningxi had completely figured out that these 6 well-trained men in black were definitely not ordinary thieves. If her guess was correct, they should be enemies of that person, coming to seek revenge. Not for wealth, not for desire, but clearly, to take a life. However, this scene was quite ridiculous. The person wasn't at home, and she was the one innocently caught up in it. Damn it, why does it happen like this every time? Ningxi gritted her teeth. She had encountered such things twice before, and today was the 3rd time. The enemies of that person seemed to be scattered all over the world, seeking revenge like this every so often. Ningxi returned to the room, her thoughts racing. Then, she quickly picked up an exquisite cartoon character action figure from the table, activated the switch, and threw it downstairs. The leading black-clad man almost instinctively pulled the trigger of his gun. As the black-clad man pulled the trigger, a faint mosquito-like sound spread, and the lower half of the cartoon character action figure was blown to pieces. "Oh, your shot hurt my feelings." The voice of the cartoon character action figure echoed. The several black-clad men looked at the broken action figure with suspicion. At this moment, the action figure continued to chatter, "Brother, did you grow up in a barbecue crematorium? This will be a slaughter. How about a magic trick first? Damn it." The leading man frowned and ruthlessly crushed the action figure that kept spouting game lines underfoot. At the same time, Ningxi's figure flashed, leaving a graceful arc in the void. Ningxi's eyes were sharp, as cold as ice. At this moment, she seemed to have turned into another person, devoid of any fear or complex emotions, only precise calculations remained. Bang! As the first spark emerged from the pitch-black muzzle in Ningxi's hand, a deep roar echoed through the entire building. Following that, a cry of misery came from the leader. His breathing became rapid, and his body staggered backward. In just a few breaths, he collapsed to the ground like a pile of mud. Ningxi's shot had hit him in the heart. Seeing this, the other 5 black-clad men were horrified. Ignoring the fallen leader, each sought cover in a panic. However, at this moment, 3 more low and muffled gunshots rang out. The 5 black-clad men hadn't found cover yet when Ningxi, on the second floor, squeezed the trigger 3 times. Bang! 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 As the gunshots echoed, almost as if to confirm something, at the same time, the 3 men downstairs collapsed to the ground, and their blood stained the floor a bright red. Outside the house, many local residents quickly closed their doors and windows. Events like this might cause panic if they happened elsewhere, but in this area, it was different. This was St. Bernardino, accustomed to such incidents. Crime was the most prominent and unforgettable label here. At this point, only the last 2 gunmen with firearms were left inside the building, each finding a good hiding spot. The 2 men, initially caught off guard and panicking, gradually regained their composure. After all, they were trained assassins. Even if they lost all their comrades, they wouldn't act like headless flies. Ningxi took the opportunity to fire several shots and then temporarily chose to retreat into the room. Who? He still hasn't come back. Ningxi took a deep breath. She had been away from this dark underground world for a long time, and facing it again so suddenly, she wasn't quite used to it. Fortunately, her recent actions were all part of her meticulous calculations, successfully eliminating 4 of them. In fact, Ningxi knew very well that it was all thanks to the exquisite cartoon character action figure from earlier. Otherwise, she might not have been able to detect those well-trained killers breaking in. If that happened, the consequences would have been unimaginable. Now, only 2 assassins remained, and for Ningxi, dealing with them wouldn't be too difficult. Soon, Ningxi found the main switchboard controlling the entire building on the floor and chose to turn it off. In an instant, the room plunged into darkness. It was like the darkest corner of the night, and the entire world seemed to fall into complete silence, devoid of any sound. The 2 gunmen downstairs were also very cautious. Instead of taking immediate action, they patiently waited for the right moment. A few days ago, when they received this assassination mission, they were already prepared for the possibility of being wiped out. After all, the target of this assassination was too famous in their circle. Despite knowing that there was a tiger in the mountains, they still leaned towards the tiger. At this point, regret was useless. They had been discovered by that person, and escaping from that person's hands was almost impossible. Now, their only option was to fight to the death, and perhaps there was a slim chance of survival. Cold sweat soaked the bodies of the 2 gunmen, but they showed no signs of impatience or fear. Trained professional killers were always like this. They hovered on the edge of the Holy Land, their hands stained with blood, doing business with their heads on the line. A situation like today's was not unprecedented. At this moment, on the 2nd floor, Ningxi also refrained from acting recklessly. Her previous success was partly due to luck, and she knew that the remaining 2 assassins were already alert. After a while, Ningxi once again picked up the exquisite cartoon character action figure from the table, activated the switch, and threw it downstairs. It had to be said that the game-themed cartoon character action figures from that person seemed to be specially customized, and their quality was excellent. Even if thrown from the 2nd floor, they wouldn't easily break. Ahahaha. I think you're an old lady. Suddenly, the dead silence was completely shattered by an abrupt voice. The mocking laughter of the cartoon character action figure echoed continuously throughout the entire building.